So we're very excited to introduce him to you. Richard is a traveling photographer. He's just told us that he's joining us from the US. It's 10:30 at night at the moment, and he's just done a session with the whole of Year 7 and the whole of Year 8. And so we're thrilled that now he'll be able to present to us as well. He's written a lot of books, I think mostly non-fiction. I'm sure he can clarify that if I'm wrong. Looking at all sorts of different things, but I think really interesting for us because he likes to explore different cultures around the world, and he's particularly interested in wildlife and environmental conservation. And hopefully as IB students, those are things that really speak to us as well, things that we feel passionate about, that we're interested in diversity, both amongst our fellow humans and in our animal world and in our environment as well. So Richard's a photojournalist, and he's had his work published in magazines and newspapers that you will recognize, like National Geographic and the New York Times. So yeah, we're very grateful to have you here with us this morning. We're very excited to listen to what you've got to tell us. And kids, if we can show our appreciation and welcome just by posting a little welcome message in the chat, please. It could just be a thank you or a welcome or something in the chat. And then Richard, over to you really, please, to let us know what your experiences have been like. And thanks
Excellent.
again.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. I'm happy to take this time to share some of my work and experience and many photographs of some of the places and animals that I have been lucky enough to photograph. So I wear a lot of hats. I'm a storyteller, I'm a writer, I'm an author, and I'm a photographer. But I wasn't always all of those things. I studied photography in university and art school, and that has been what I've done professionally. And one of the areas that I've been lucky to specialize in photograph has been wildlife. And at one point in my wildlife photography career, I was invited to photograph seals, and in particular, the birth of the baby white-coat harp seals. And those seals are born in eastern Canada in late February, early March. And the seals migrate. They live most of the year in the Arctic Circle, but the babies can't swim when they're born. So the moms need to find patches of floating ice to come up out of the water to give birth. So that particular time of year in Canada, there are these giant ice cubes floating in the ocean. So the seals come there to give birth. And the only way to get out to see the seals is on a helicopter. And naturally, as you can understand, helicopter pilots are very safety conscious. And if there's any wind or snow or rain or fog, they won't fly. So I was stuck. I was waiting with a group of about 20 people. We would go in a caravan, usually of 4 or 5 helicopters for safety. We would travel out to the ice together. And we were all just waiting for the helicopter pilots to say, okay, it's safe, we can get out to the ice. And within the group, there was a film crew from National Geographic. There were marine biologists and scientists who used this opportunity to study the seals. There were animal welfare people that were working to protect the seals. Some of you probably know that there's been controversy over the hunting of those baby white-coat seals. And there was a very famous writer, a man named Farley Mowat, who had written some of the most important books about nature and wildlife. And he was the celebrity in our group. A book of his called Never Cry Wolf had just been made into a big Hollywood movie, and it actually is a biographical story. So the lead character in the movie, played by an actor, is named Farley Mowat. He did this wonderful book that may be in your school library called Owls in the Family for school-age children. And I was thrilled and excited to have a chance to meet him. And I had an idea for what would become my first book. And it was going to be a book for students about your age, about the harp seals. And my idea for the book, which was called Seal Journey, was to tell 2 stories: the migration of the seals from north to south, and then tell the story through the eyes of a child who would travel from south to north, and they would meet in the middle. So I shared this idea with Farley Moet. I stopped him and I said, "Can I talk to you for a minute?" He said, "Sure, I'm not going anywhere. Tell me what's on your mind." And I said, "I have an idea for a book. I want to make it a book for children. It's going to be called Seal Journey. The seals come from the north, the child comes from the south. They meet in the middle. And I think that would be an interesting way to tell the story." And he said, "Wow, it sounds terrific. I think it's good. Good luck." And I said, "Well, I'm the photographer, and I would love to have you write it. Would you indulge me and write that with me?" And he looked at me and he stopped. And without thinking or hesitating, he said, "No, no way. I'm not going to write that book." And I was kind of hurt and taken aback. I like to hear the answer yes when I ask people things, not no. And I said, well, don't you like the idea?" He said, "I told you I do like the idea." And I said, "Why can't you write it?" And he said, "Well, I can't write it because it's not my idea. It's your idea." And I backed off and said, "No, I'm a photographer. I'm not that comfortable writing. I don't know. I'm not great at grammar. I don't always put the commas in the right places. And my verb tenses don't always match. And how could I possibly think about writing that book?" And he said, "I've spent a lot of time with you in the last few days. And when we sit and have meals, I love to sit at your table and hear you tell stories." He said, "I love to hear you talk about the people that you've met and the places that you visit. You're a really good storyteller." And I thought about it, and I do like to talk and have people listen. And I said, "Well, how will that comfort level and that love of my telling stories allow me to write this book?" And he stopped and he said 4 words, and he turned and walked away. He said, "Just write it down." He took off. That day we weren't flying, we were stuck. And I thought about it and I said, I just got words of advice from a very well-known famous author. I better take this seriously. So that day I did that. I just started writing as if I was talking and telling the story. And I didn't stop for spelling and I didn't make the paragraphs organized. I just got that story out on paper. And that's still the style that I use to this day. My first draft is a mess. Nobody should ever see it or I'd be laughed at. But over time, I rewrite it, I write some more, I send it to my editors and my teachers. They help me push my grammar and get it in proper shape. And I'm grateful to this day to Farley Moet for saying no and helping me to find my own voice to begin to add words to my photographs. So now I want to take you with me to Africa. I'm going to share one of my stories. Hopefully it will come up on the screen as it's supposed to. So karibu. Karibu is the Swahili word for welcome. And Swahili is the common language of East Africa, where I'm going to take you to meet one of my favorite animals. So as a wildlife photographer, my life can get a little interesting at times. I've been chased by hippos. I've eaten an orange with an orangutan. I've lounged with a leopard. I've cuddled with bear cubs. I've gazed with gazelles. I've stampeded with stallions. I've locked eyes with a lion. I've paraded with peacocks. And I've sat with seals. I think some of you might like seals, so I'll give you a couple more. I've been splashed by the tail of a whale. sometimes I've run away from elephants. And I even lost a brand new tripod to a monkey. I started a book on the extremely endangered rhinoceros. I've gone to Kenya to visit the last of the northern white rhinos. And I got to meet a very special rhino named Sudan. Sudan is gentle and was quite welcoming, even to me. Sudan is the last remaining male northern white rhino on Earth. He represents the last of his species. He's watched and protected 24 hours a day. But when he's gone, it could be the end of that species. To me, it was a chance to see extinction before my very own eyes. Now, some other rhinos are doing better in Africa. The southern white rhinos are being protected, and babies are being born, and their numbers are slowly increasing. But shortly after I got home, I read the newspaper and saw the headline that Sudan had died. And perhaps that does mean that's the end of the northern white rhinos. So I've now made photographs and written stories for 17 books, but I wanted to give you a little quick introduction about how I got started. For several years, I was fortunate to work as a photojournalist, making news and animal stories and political stories for local and international magazines. I was lucky to meet President Bill Clinton, and as he carried his saxophone to the White House, I also was invited to share some of those historic moments in Washington, D.C. My interest in politics led me to do a series of books going behind the scenes with American elected officials. But after too much time being around politicians, I needed an escape. So I went to a different kind of jungle, a natural one in Africa. And with many natural habitats around the world rapidly shrinking and disappearing, I travel the globe to photograph species of endangered animals before they disappear. And one of my favorite animals, and also one that is among the most threatened and struggling for survival, is the mountain gorilla. Sadly, there are now less than 700 of these powerful yet shy creatures left on Earth. And maybe like some of you, I got my first look at a gorilla in a movie theater. But a lot of movies or cartoons often exaggerate gorillas and turn them into fierce bullies or mean monsters, when actually they're rather quiet, peaceful animals, most often happiest to live without ever encountering people at all. So I took a long journey to East Africa, hoping to stare deep into the wide eyes of some of our world's few remaining mountain gorillas. Those gorillas living in Uganda. Now, a lot of wildlife stories or Discovery Channel and Animal Planet documentaries, they often tend to portray and show animals as if they live in giant zoos or protected areas that are completely isolated and living away from people. And one theme I explore in this book is that this population of gorillas and most groups of endangered wildlife don't, in fact, live in isolation or alone by themselves. And even if they're protected and in special wildlife parks, most animals still have a special relationship with the people around them and the people that are paid to protect them. So, of course, although I love wildlife, I think it's also so important to remember the people of the neighboring villages and think about the kind of sacrifices or rewards that affect the lives of the people living nearby. I found out that getting close enough to photograph the few mountain gorillas alive on our planet today is a real challenge. Mountain gorillas have never survived in captivity. None can be found in circuses or animal theme parks or zoos. And the entire remaining population live in the dense rainforests of 2 neighboring national parks in Central Africa. The first stop on my journey in Uganda is in Kampala, the capital city. It's a busy, colorful center filled with shoppers and people. It's filled with schools, and children come in from the countryside for their education. It has a wide variety of hotel choices, although I confess I didn't spend too much time at this particular African hotel. But when I get to a new place, usually the first afternoon, I'd like to take a walk outside and warm up to the new smells and new sights. But I was a little confused as I passed the human drug shop. It did make me pause and wonder what else might try to walk through that front door, looking for some medicine. But Kampala's the place I had to pick up my official gorilla tracking permits from the Uganda Wildlife Authority. The permits are expensive. Each 1-hour session can today cost as much as $500 per visit. That's 20 times more than a Ugandan National Park permit for a full day visit with the other animals that live nearby, like the zebras, lions, black rhinos, or elephants. Even though this is a lot of money, I know this small fortune is going to help protect many other endangered species. And the money raised through gorilla tourism and those expensive permits I bought will help the Uganda Wildlife Authority pay park rangers to protect all the plants and animals and provide medicine and research studies for other species that need help too. The money also goes to repair the local roads and provide medicine for local children. So the people living near the animals have the gorillas and the tourists that visit them to thank for many of the resources that keep them healthy. The mountain gorillas are indeed the superstars of all the endangered species in Central Africa. After I have my permits, it's still a long 8-hour drive to the southern mountains. It's a journey that starts in the northern hemisphere and ends across the invisible line that marks the equator in the southern hemisphere. It's a journey that twists and turns through a landscape of sharp angles. Uganda is a green and fertile country. The soil is healthy for growing, and the old worn road is surrounded on all sides by fields of bananas, beans, and tomatoes that hug the sides of the hills. And the people who plant and work these small gardens press their bare feet into the rich dirt so they can harvest the food that they need for their survival. There are very few cars or trucks traveling here, and the roads become wide sidewalks alive with people. Everyone seems to carry something they need for their survival. And sometimes that load is larger than the carrier. I have many bikes and scooters at a collection here at home, but I'd never seen a two-wheeled vehicle quite like this anywhere before. These boys made these scooters themselves. They cut and carved the dried wood and then held everything together with pegs and string. They wanted to make one custom fitted for me, but I didn't think I could check it in on the airplane as yet another piece of luggage alongside all my other travel and photo gear. Nestled into the valley gardens are homes built out of mud, sticks, and dried grasses. They kind of look like chocolate cupcakes with drips of mocha frosting running over them. Throughout the day, wisps of white smoke stream through small holes in the roofs, rising up from the cooking fires burning within. As I traveled by, the scent of burnt charcoal filled my nose. As I got near to Kisoro, the town closest to where the mountain gorillas live, one set of jagged peaks replaced another around each winding corner, and the long rays of sunlight fell into deep shadows. In this small corner of Africa, 3 countries, Uganda, Rwanda, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, meet in a chain of rough mountains called the Virungas. The steep slopes all around are part of an active volcanic range that thrusts high up into the soft rain clouds. And it is here that the last remaining mountain gorillas make their home, divided almost equally between 2 areas that are protected and monitored by national park rangers. The 2 gorilla populations once lived together in a single large forest, but little by little, African farmers cleared land in the Central Valley of the gorilla habitat, and the gorillas divided into 2 separate groups, while the farmers stayed in the middle. Rising early the next morning, I drive from Kisoro to my first scheduled meeting with the gorillas. I can see the dense forest that defines the border of the protected conservation land of Bwindi National Park. Orderly patches of potatoes and bananas and small homes grow right up to the forest's rough edges. I check in to meet my guide for my expedition. His name is Silver Mbonigamba. Silver grew up on the border of Bwindi National Park, and now today he is the chief ranger. He has spent every day for the last years in the company of the gorillas. At first, the gorillas would flee deep into the forest when Silver and his team of trackers approached. But over time, the gorillas grew comfortable with the rangers, allowing them to move in closer and closer. At sunrise each morning, Silver leaves the small one-room house that he shares with his family, and he hikes in to meet the gorillas. These daily early morning ranger visits help to preserve the gorillas' acceptance of humans so that small groups of visitors and photographers like me can hike in to see them. At the edge of the forest, Silver explains to me there are many strict rules that all visitors must follow. First and foremost, he tells me, when we see the gorillas, we cannot disturb them. He then explains that my visit will be limited to 1 hour, 60 minutes exactly. Then he reviews a long list of things for me to remember. No food or eating, no photographs with a flash, no loud noise or loud talking, and last of all, no sneezing, since my germs could make the gorillas sick. The family of gorillas that I'm visiting is called the Nkaringo group. They got their name for the little village next to where they were first seen. And although Silver and his team have been tracking these gorillas for almost 4 years, I get to be the first photographer and the first outside visitor the Nkaringo gorillas will encounter. This makes me a little nervous as I study Silver and his team with the dark African skin. I look so different from them. So I ask Silver, what might the Nkaringo gorillas think of my white skin? He laughs and says, don't worry, Richard. With all of those cameras, I think they will hardly be able to notice your skin color. People still live right up to the very edge of the official national park, and the gorillas may not always understand why they can't just eat from somebody's garden. The local people are also surprised to learn they're the only people in Africa or anywhere in the world who live right next to mountain gorillas. This makes them proud of the special role they have in helping to keep watch over their famous neighbors. And if the gorillas do stray from the park, The local people alert Silver and his team, who help chase the gorillas back across the boundary and into the safety of the forest. Crossing into the park this early morning, we quickly begin our steep climb to find the gorillas. There are no paths or sidewalks, buses, subways, taxis, or chairlifts for human guests. And once I plunge into that thick, wet forest, I have to overcome the same obstacles that the gorillas confront each day. Silver opens his notebook and checks the last location where the Nkuringo gorillas were observed the day before. This will become the starting point for today's visit. And as we move through the walls of brush, the trackers look for signs and clues. Broken branches, piles of dung, and tracks in the mud are the jungle's road markers to finding the path that the gorillas have made in their search for fresh food. Mountain gorillas usually spend all morning searching for food and then sitting and eating. Once the gorillas find a natural cafeteria of leaves, green bamboo, or wild celery roots to stop at for breakfast, they take their time feasting. This is when Silver and his team of rangers usually arrive. So the Nkuringo gorillas have gotten used to people visiting them during their breakfast. I smell something really strong, and Silver shows me the first clue that the gorillas might be close. It's a wide, flat pile of spongy leaves and branches, the nests the gorillas slept in the night before. I smile with delight on seeing the source of that ripe odor. It's the warm piles of fresh dung that line the nests. So it's really the gorillas' poop that tells us that they're probably nearby. I hear branches snapping and hope it's the gorillas racing up the hillside, searching for their breakfast buffet. Following Silver, I call ahead. Come on, he urges me. We're almost with them now. Swinging his sharp knife, he cuts through the brush and heavy vines and opens up a meter-wide tunnel for me to look through. Stopping and smiling, he whispers, "Look through these branches. The gorillas are here. They've stopped to eat, and we have found them." My heart's pounding as I step forward, but I'm pulled in two directions. Should I grab my camera, or should I simply look ahead to see with my own eyes the mountain gorillas whom I traveled so far to meet? I remind myself that I'm here as a photographer, and my first glimpse should come to me through my lens. I raise my camera. I look ahead, and I see a pair of wide eyes staring right back at me. I press the shutter again and again. I have found the moment that I came here to photograph. I stay focused, my eyes locked, and I continue to record my first mountain gorilla, who's carefully selecting the sweetest branch to munch on. A vine moves and a row of wide, knobby fingers float up, placing a bouquet of spiny-tipped leaves into a round bulb of a mouth. She chews her breakfast and raises her thick arm for more, almost as if in slow motion. I watch through my camera and see her delicately stripping the outer layer from a long stem. By now I'm soaked with sweat, but I'm delighted to be another soggy piece of the rainforest, and maybe another strong odor as well. I look to my left and I see the leader of this family group. It's a large male known as a silverback. He gets his name from that dramatic wedge of lighter colored hair that covers his back. As the silverback settles in to slowly chew on some leaves, he moves deeper into the brush, making my job so much harder. I watch through a maze of branches and sticks, realizing full well that the gorillas are here for food and not to give me better angles to make my photographs. Let me share a few of the things that I learned in my visits in the rainforest. Gorillas are primarily vegetarians, but they do have a sweet spot for any ants or insects that might wander by. The adults consume between 15 and 20 kilos of food each day. But since the leaves and roots and twigs and bark and berries that they eat are small and lightweight, the gorillas spend more than half of each day just looking for food. The gorillas have strong bonds to one another and stay close together in family groups of between 20 and 30. Both the males and the females care for and play with their young. This is most obvious during the late mornings after they've eaten, and they bounce and sway through trees and vines. Maybe they're looking for a comfortable place to nap during the heat of the midday sun. The babies and smaller gorillas cling to the adults as family members groom one another, picking bugs and other nasty gunk out of their deep coats. The babies will nurse and stay right next to their mothers for the first 6 months of their lives. And after that, they slowly start to roam and explore more on their own. But where are the young gorillas? I'm still hoping for that photograph too. And with only minutes left of my permitted 1 hour, I look way up a tall kapok tree, and a small 1-year-old emerged from the branches for just a few seconds. I had just enough time to focus and hold down the shutter to make a quick sequence as this playful gorilla hopped between shadow and direct sunlight, giving me a real test of my technical photography skills, and then finally settling in so I could make one portrait. Just as Silver held up his hand and signaled to me that my hour was past and it was time to give this forest back to the gorillas. Although all of my gorilla visits have been to Uganda, the gorillas themselves travel internationally without visas or tour guides. As the seasons change, they cross into neighboring Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo as they pursue food supplies on all sides of the border that cuts into their small home range. But there's still many challenges and problems facing the gorillas. They're still hunted illegally, and there's still war and conflict in this corner of Africa. And bombs and bullets have also hurt the mountain gorillas. But the benefits that visitors and tourism bring to the local people and all the other protected animals of Africa are shared in all 3 countries. But the gorillas themselves have no passports. The gorillas are free ambassadors, bringing people together to see them in Africa and bringing smiles to the African people that live right alongside them as they invite everyone to a breakfast in the rainforest. Thank you so much for bearing with me and watching my photographs and listening to my story. And I hope we have time now. If you have questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
Thank you so much, Richard. That was fantastic. I was really captivated. I was really engaging.
Thank you for those kind words.
How will it work best in terms of asking questions, Richard? Do you want the students to type the questions in the chat, or do you want them to just unmute?
Yeah, that's either way. You can call on them, or you can read them from the, or if one of you would read them directly from the chat.
Yeah,
whatever's going to be the most, whatever's the most time efficient, I think.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So folks, we've got just about 3 or 4 minutes really. If you've got any questions that you wanted to ask, if you want to type them into the chat, that's fine. Or just unmute yourselves if you're confident enough to speak. Okay, I'm sure you have lots of questions. Thanks, Zarik. So Zarik says, how long did it take to find the gorillas in the rainforest?
Well, it took me about 5 days to leave from the time I left my home to actually get to that first morning where I had the opportunity to see the gorillas. And actually the first day it took about 5 hours in the forest to find the gorillas. And as a storyteller, in the book, I tell the story, and the way I just related to you, I tell the story as if it all happened in one day. But as a photographer, I knew I would never get all the photos in one day, so I actually had 5 days with the gorillas. So the first day, it took 5 hours to get to the gorillas, up, down, through streams, crossing riverbeds, through mud. And the second day, some miraculous reason, it took about 45 minutes to find the gorillas. And I had a thought to myself that perhaps because these rangers had been so used to working alone, that they thought, well, let's just kill this guy off on the first day, and then we won't have him around bugging us for the next 5 days. But I think I disappointed them, and I survived the first day, continued to travel. So.
Thank you. That's a really interesting answer, to find out that you were actually there for 5 days, but as a storyteller that you've just put it into the one story. We've got another question. Did you dream of being a nature photographer or an author, or did it just sort of happen?
It kind of happened that I had been doing a lot of news magazine work and political work, and I'd been very actively involved in a campaign for presidency here in the United States. And my candidate, who I knew and I'd spent a lot of time with, he lost. So it was kind of my winter of discontent. And I had a friend who was going to work for an animal welfare organization who kind of saved me and said, let me toss you into the jungle so you can not have to deal with people for a while. And then I realized I loved the wildlife photography, and I kept doing that since then.
Okay, thank you. Then we've also got a question. Did you actually feel threatened at all or frightened when you were with the gorillas?
Actually, I never did feel frightened when I was with the gorillas. One of the things that I'm careful about is that I always have somebody like Silver with me. So wherever I go, if I'm photographing lions, I want somebody to say, wait a minute, that's a hungry lion. Let's find you a lion who's already been fed, and you'd be a little safer to photograph. So because I had Silver, and I'm always careful to have a guide with me, I don't usually feel threatened by the animals.
Okay, great. And we've got another question. When were those photographs taken? Were they, what year were they taken in? How recent is the story?
It kind of blurs, and I've actually been back to that part of the world several times. So I'm kind of like some of you may play chess, and you know how many moves ahead you can see. So for me, if I've been to a country more than 8 times, I can't count anymore. I just know I've been there more than 8 times. So it's been a long process of going to Uganda and East Africa and photographing wildlife. And in fact, I've been to Indonesia now 3, maybe 4 times, primarily to photograph the orangutan. And I hope to do a book about the orangutan and the conflict with the deforestation and the increase in planting the palm trees for palm oil plantation, and help to share that story.
Okay, fantastic. Well, we'll look out for that one then. I was going to ask you that actually, but the students have had so many questions. I've got a couple more. Proudest moment in your
Say
work.
it again.
The proudest moment. What has given you the greatest sense of pride?
Okay, so I would say at this point, certainly the Mountain Gorilla story and the success of that book. Some of you may have noticed when the book cover was on the screen, or maybe I can hold it up, that that doesn't work. I'm lucky that that Leonardo DiCaprio was very engaged in protecting wildlife, and he graciously consented to write the introduction for that book. So that was a very proud moment for me.
That's great. Yeah, we still had a couple more questions. Last
Go ahead,
one,
what's your
favorite animal that you've taken a photo of?
I like big animals. So the mountain gorillas are the largest of the primates. And I love the largest land animal, which is the elephant. And I've done books on elephants. And I've done books on the largest of all the animals, which are the whales. So typically I like the big animals.
Okay, awesome. Okay, well, I think I just want to say a huge thanks again to you for coming along and spending some of your precious time with us. It's been really fascinating learning a bit about your journey. I loved all the storytelling techniques that you used. I was tempted to type in the chat, oh, metaphor, oh, sensory imagery, alliteration. It was really beautifully narrated. I was completely sucked in. I can't think of the last time when somebody actually read a story to me. It was a real privilege. So on behalf of all the students and the staff as well, I think, thank you so much. And we look forward to having your books in our library and being able to say, hey, we've met him. We've heard a part of his story.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Students, if you want to type a little message in the chat, then I know some of you have them. Thank you so much. That's really nice. It's lovely to hear your appreciation as well and get a sense of that. It is break time though, folks, so you are okay to pack up if you're in your classroom and to head off. We've got a tight schedule now, haven't we, with our blended learning. And students at home, yes, you can leave the meet. You're invited to do so as well. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Oh, look at all these lovely thank yous.
Lovely.
Excellent. Okay, well, Pat Ahmad and Helena, thank you for arranging this for us. Thanks for organising it. I loved it. It was great. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu, for being the facilitator.
Okay. Thank you, Richard. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, it's done for today. Yeah.
Okay, so we will meet again tomorrow for younger students.
Yes, for younger students.
Okay, and I have it's a different presentation for them as well. So
Okay.
Yeah, actually we will start the first session at 8 o'clock, but we will open the Zoom Jamit link maybe 15 minutes before. Yeah.
excellent. I think we are. I don't want to jinx it, but I think we're in good shape technically. So
Yes, today was like smooth, and then like the audio, the video, or the presentation was like okay. It's really engaging.
Great. All right. Thank you all. Have a good day.
Yes, you too. Have a good evening. Good night.
Wait a moment, Richard.
Sorry, Pak.
I just want to let you know that our finance department has just sent the payment yesterday afternoon. Hopefully, it will be in your account in 2 or 3 days.
Oh, excellent. I will be looking for it. Thank you for that update.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Ya. Recordnya dulu di stop.